Let's have a conversation.
What's going on, my people? Happy Monday. Happy Monday. Now, as you can see by the title, this topic is a potentially triggering topic. So, before I even get into the topic, I have to give a trigger warning because it is about a very serious topic, which involves this time Steven Twitch Boss. So if you don't feel like you are able to participate in this conversation, feel free to close out this video, um, because I understand. I understand it's a tough one for us to address. And not all the topics that I have on this page are going to be fun topics, are going to be entertainment per se. So before I start, I'm just going to put this quote up here because I like to infuse some positivity, especially on a Monday, especially to begin the week. A little motivation. Pain doesn't tell you when you ought to stop. Pain is the little voice in your head that tries to hold you back because it knows if you continue, you will change. Don't let it stop you from being who you can be. Exhaustion tells you when you ought to stop. You only reach your limit when you can go no further. So this quote is basically just telling you the difference between when you feel pained but you can still keep going versus when you have gone as much as you can and you've reached your limit and you have to rest for a little bit before you continue on further. So I hope you take that with you for the week. Now, I don't like to report on these topics when they first happen. And the reason why is because within the first however many days, mostly what you're seeing is all the conspiracy theories. And I don't really, sometimes they could have some truth to them, sometimes they could not have some truth to them, but I can only really go off of the facts that are given. And frankly, sometimes those are the most important parts, or sometimes the conspiracies distract us from the most important parts of what we should be talking about. So I didn't go too deep into this, even though I watched a lot of videos and read autopsy stuff that they had online and saw a lot of different things. I'm not getting too deep into that. But what we do know is that I guess last week, Monday, Steven Boss left his house inconspicuously, unknown. He didn't tell his wife, and he checked into the Oak Tree Inn, which they say is about a mile away from his home. He was supposed to check out on Tuesday morning at 11 o'clock. That's checkout time. And they're saying that when he didn't check out, they called his room. There was no answer. And then housekeeping and management knocked on the door. Then eventually they knocked on the door repeatedly. And then they eventually opened the door, found him in the bathroom, self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. And that was that. So he left behind, unfortunately, his two biological kids that he had with his wife, Allison, and a third overall that I believe was her kid. So here's what we know of the guy. I mean, from all reports of everybody, all the celebrities that knew him, all the family and friends that knew him and everything, they're like, we're shocked and saddened. He was so happy. Him and his wife had just celebrated their 9th anniversary. We always saw him smiling. We always saw him dancing. This is the reason why a lot of people said that this has to be some kind of conspiracy, because there's no way that somebody so happy could have taken his own life. Now, like I said, I'm not going to 100% discount all validity to the conspiracies. Who knows what could come out months, weeks, months from now? Who knows? I mean, sometimes stories have unfolded themselves in different ways. But what I do want to say is there's no specific blueprint that suicide follows. I promise you that. There is no specific blueprint, and you do not always know in advance. And I can tell you that from experiences, plural, that I've had with people who have been suicidal. My first such experience, I have mentioned this on my channel at a point before when I made my last post on this topic. I had a friend who lost a parent many years ago, maybe 16, 17 years ago at this point. And this is my first ever experience with somebody having a suicide attempt. I asked this person how they were doing because I just assumed, even though I was young at the time, I was a teenager, obviously I'm like, losing a parent is going to hurt, and it's going to hurt badly. And the way that they lost this parent was from an illness that just swept them up really quickly, 6 months. So it was devastating. It was devastating for that person, and it was devastating for me also because I was close with that person, and I was close with the family overall, and I was there while they were struggling and dying. It was very hard to deal with. And I would always look at my friend, and I was kind of surprised actually, because I said, if this was my parent, I would be really emotional, really broken down, and I wouldn't be able to come to school and smile and laugh and be happy and whatever. So I just assumed that they were just very strong and had a high capacity to handle pain. So I still remember when that parent passed. And then I remember afterwards, I would ask, how are you doing? How are you feeling? Maybe not often enough, but for me, I was like, if I'm asking them how they're doing, how they're feeling, and they're telling me, I'm fine. I'm just reading the Bible, praying, I'm leaning on friends and family, like, they knew all the right things to say, I believe, to get me and others to stop asking questions. But meanwhile, there was an internal struggle. And I'm saying all of this to say there's no one specific way that somebody looks. And this is something that I've seen in too many videos, comments. Oh, he looks so happy. The wife had to have done something. It had to have been an argument and fight that they were having, or somebody had to have missed the warning signs, because none of this makes sense. Unfortunately, it doesn't make sense. There has been so many years of research on this specific topic. There's scientists that study the brain. There's people that have PhDs, doctorates. And if you go online or if you go in the library, everything is theories. Everything is a theory. Because it's not an easy thing to answer. Good morning, Rory. How are you? It's not an easy thing to come up with answers for. And I am somebody who not only knows at least 3 people who made suicide attempts, 3 people in my personal life who made suicide attempts. Thankfully, none of those people were successful with that. But also, I've been a mental health counselor for the last 7 years and spoken to several people who have made attempts, or I've spoken to several people who have lost family members and friends due to suicide. And when I ask all of them, it's not like there's one conclusive thing or there's one specific sign that they all saw. that let them know that this was the last of it, or this was my last thought that went through my head before I made my attempt. But going back to my friend's story, one day there was a situation that happened with him, unrelated to anything. I'm not going to go into the specifics of what happened to him because it was pretty serious and it was pretty specific, and just to protect the privacy of the parties involved. So there was a situation that happened with him that he had a very strong reaction to, stronger than what the situation called for. And I was not aware at this time of what was going on in his mind. His mind was going through much deeper things than the actual situation going on, to where it was causing him to act out in certain ways. He became very aggressive and act out in certain ways that were surprising to me, because this was one of the most kind and docile, gentle kind of people that I knew, and I had never seen him act that particular way. So I was concerned for him at that point, but I still was not connecting what had gone on with the loss of his parent to this. And I remember, I found him. I was planning to go to a friend's house that weekend, so we took this guy with us because we didn't want him to be alone. We were all laughing. We were all having a good time at the house. All three of us. We were all having a great time at the house. We were just playing video games, talking, laughing, joking, all that kind of good stuff. And then this person said, I need to go to the bathroom. Right? They left the room. We weren't thinking anything of it. We're just chilling. We're just playing video games and whatever. And then I'm thinking, he's been gone for quite some time. Let me just call him. Called his name. No answer. And I'm like, this is a little strange. Maybe I should pause the game and get up and go check where he is. I get out there into the living room. They're holding a bottle of pills. And I was just taking them, and I was just petrified for a second. My brain could not process what was going on. But after about maybe 30 seconds, I was able to process what was going on, ran over there and just knocked the pills out of the hand and took the bottle away and yelled so that everyone in the house would just kind of come out and see and know what was going on, because it was very scary. And my brain was not thinking this person is trying to commit suicide. That was not what was going on in my mind. So I asked, what are you doing? And he was like, well, I just have a bad headache. And I'm like, oh, no. You do not need this many pills for a headache. It's like, oh, I was just taking them until the pain goes away. I don't even remember what I was thinking at that time, but it was confusing. It was so confusing to me. The end of the story is that this person ended up in the hospital, had to go to the psych ward and all this kind of stuff. They're still here today. They're still here today, thankfully. Thank you for talking on this subject. I have been avoiding info on Twitch. It is so upsetting. But was really hoping you would shine some light on what happened. Well, Trisha, you're welcome for touching on the topic. I have been avoiding information on it too. I really did not go deep into it until a day or two ago when I decided this is what my channel is about. Ultimately, this is one of the main things that it's about. So I feel I have to talk about it. But in terms of the information that's out there, I don't have any more information than anyone else. Like I was saying at the beginning of this video, the only things that are out there are that he left their house on Monday. Yeah, he left their house on Monday and he went to a motel allegedly. And then they found him in the hotel on Tuesday morning. And according to the wife, they didn't have any fight or any kind of an argument prior to him checking in. It was a surprise that he left the house without his car and didn't tell her where he was going or didn't tell her that he was leaving. And I guess one of the main things that I wanted to say is that depression doesn't have one specific look. Because, like I said, I've seen a lot of people online saying, oh, this person looks so happy all the time. This person, he was always dancing. He was always lighting up the room. We've said this about a lot of celebrities that have faced similar circumstances. I didn't expect this. They're a very happy person. They light up the room. A lot of times I think that people, and particularly men, if you look up the suicide rates in men versus women, it's much higher amongst men. It's much higher. I think it's 3 to 4 times more. I wish I had stats. I do have some stats, but I don't have them readily on me. But if you look it up anywhere, more men commit suicide than women. And also, if you look up therapy rates, right, there's several more women that are in some kind of talk therapy than men. So this is a correlation for me. I think that this is a direct correlation here. Women are more willing to talk about things that hurt them, about things that are painful for them. A lot of times they are the ones that are more prone to be talking to their friends, to be talking to their family. This is what's going on. This is what's happening with me. I feel happy. I feel sad. I feel angry. I feel hurt. I feel this. I feel that. This is necessary. This is a necessary thing that needs to happen. This is a necessary thing that needs to happen in order for us to keep going. And I feel like a lot of men, myself included, not so much now, but definitely when I first got my diagnosis, I was not talking to anybody about anything because I'm like, I'm a man, I'm tough, I'm strong. Thank you for sharing this difficult story as well as touching on Twitch's passing. You're welcome. I could be wrong, but I just personally believe that people who commit usually just do it without telling anyone. I'm glad you said that, Rory. I'm glad you said that, Rory, because people think that everybody who does that tells you, and I can tell you this from experience, from almost 10 years now. I've almost been in the mental health field for 10 years. And the people that we have lost while I have, worked on the job or whatever, are not the ones that keep saying, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this. The ones that we have lost are usually the ones that make the plans, don't tell anybody. They don't tell anybody because they actually are ready to commit and don't want to be talked out of it. That's a hard thing to hear, but it's a real truth. It's a real truth here. It seems most of the time when someone has made up their mind to end their lives, that's a hard truth, but it's the truth. It's the truth. It's the truth a lot of the time. Good morning, Mark. I'm driving to my next appointment, but I will come back to replay. Thanks, Mark, for covering this. Twitch is struggling and mental health is to be taken more serious. So sad. It is. They normally can. Yeah, for some. Yeah, I'll add that. That's not a one size fits all. However, I will say for a lot of people, that is the case. You don't know. There was a story here in New York. I think it was 2019, where there was this man who he was a married man and he had a daughter. And I don't know, some of y'all may have heard of this. He was involved in the daughter's school. He came to the PTA meetings. As far as everybody knew, there was nothing really going on with him that was known. And he was walking his daughter. So what he would do was he would take his daughter to school every day. So he walked his daughter to the train station and he had the daughter in his arms and he was talking on the phone. And the people that were around said that the conversation sounded very normal. So when the train came, he jumped in front of the train and he passed. And then fortunately, thank God, his daughter fell out of his arms and was under the tracks and was spotted by a couple of the people around the tracks. And then they got on the tracks and called to her and pulled her out and rescued her. But there was no signs of this man going through this struggle of whatever he was going through, and he just jumped in front of the train. So a lot of times we don't know. Sometimes there's warning signs. I mean, sometimes they are people who have diagnosed mental illnesses. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes it's people who talk about, I'm unhappy with my life. I feel hopeless. I feel like I'm a burden to people. Sometimes you get those kind of warning signs, but sometimes you don't. The friend that I'm telling you guys about, I did not have such warning signs because I asked him, not just once or twice. I would ask him frequently, how are you doing? How are you feeling? How has the loss of your parent impacted you? If you need someone to talk to, I'm here. Let me know. Give me a call. Reach out. We can meet up. We can talk. And I'm thinking that getting the answers of, you know what? Thank you so much. Everything is okay. It's hard, but I'm managing. I'm dealing with it. I'm just taking his word at face value. And then this incident happens with him. But that was one. I had another incident where I had somebody that in this case, the person had gone through a trauma. This person had gone through a trauma, and I suggested that they talk to somebody or go to a hospital or like a psych ward or a respite house, just somewhere to get out of their environment where this trauma took place. And they said, no, I will be fine. And I took that at face value, and they made an attempt as well that was also not successful. But I think in that case, I had more warning signs than in the first case. And in retrospect, I wish I had done more and been more insistent. But it's a hard line at the same time because you don't want to be insistent to the point of somebody shutting you out, because that can happen. You don't want to be insistent to the point of somebody like, oh, this person is doing the most. This is what I want to do. And if I talk to this person, they're going to get in the way of what I'm trying to do. But sometimes you do have to be willing to have uncomfortable conversations with somebody, because you would rather have an uncomfortable conversation with somebody than to be at their funeral. I don't know any other way to put it aside from that. I heard Twitch left a note, but yeah, the details have not been released. And people are like, we need to know the details. And I'm like, we don't need to know that. It would be out for curiosity's sake. Maybe it would be interesting to know the details, but we have a family that's grieving. So I would not be surprised if those details are left amongst them. I think people could be struggling and then so Trisha, so that was a situation that was going on with the first friend that I was telling you about, where he was struggling for a while with a big issue, and he was struggling with that thing for a while. And then like a small issue happened, and it was the tipping point. So for me, I was looking at that small issue and I was confused. I was like, it's not even that serious. Why did he have this serious reaction like that? And then, like, looking back and in retrospect and knowing all the things I know now, I know that it was not that specific thing. It was that he was teetering, he was on edge. And that was just the straw that broke the camel's back. I know that it doesn't make the pain from someone's loved ones, but hopefully. So it's interesting, Rory, because I have a friend who lost a sibling through these means, because I don't want to keep saying the word, but a friend who lost their sibling, and they got a note. And within the note, they told me about the note. And within the note, it basically said, I love you guys, and I'm sorry because I feel like I'm a failure, and I feel like I don't want to be a burden to you guys anymore. And I know that this will remove the burden. And this is a common thing that we hear from these notes. And that particular friend told me that the note eats at them. They said that the note eats at them because they feel like they never felt like the guy was a burden. They never felt like he was a burden. And that friend of mine wishes that she had the opportunity to actually talk to him about, you know, the way that he was feeling and talk him out of it. So like, it's so tough because the note might be some sense of closure, but I feel like there's no real closure for that. It's already a tragic story, but it's tough to deal for some, if not most. Yeah, I know what you're saying, though, because then we have a situation of just speculation, putting pieces together. Why did this happen? How did this happen? Instead of actually seeing something from that person where they're giving you the how and why. So that's pretty much all I have to say for that portion of it. I'm not done yet, but just for that portion of it, because that's it for that. I have done a more in-depth video about this topic in and of itself before, so I'm not really going to get into all those things that I put up before. But what I am going to say is it's very important to check on the people around you and to check on yourself. It's important to check on the people around you and to check on yourself. And when I say to check on the people around you and yourself, I don't just mean to ask somebody how you're doing, because that gives somebody the opportunity to give you the easy answer that we all give each other. I'm doing good. I'm doing fine. I'm hanging in there. I'm managing. You know, ask more specific questions. How's your job going? Or how are things going with your family? Are you facing any challenges that you would like to talk about? You know, spend time listening to them very carefully. Listen to them very carefully and see if there's any openings to kind of go more in depth on some of the things that they say that they're facing as challenges. If it sounds like, if they keep coming to you repeatedly, or they keep mentioning to you repeatedly a problem that seems insurmountable or one that they are having trouble finding solutions for, it's okay to offer for them to call a warm line. A warm line, for those who don't know, is a level below a hotline, because we all know what a hotline is. That's what somebody calls when they are kind of at their wit's end. Whereas a warm line is a line that you can call that is in between the hot line, where you have a more medium temperature issue. Or you can tell them, have you considered speaking to an advisor, a therapist, a counselor? Because we need to remove that stigma that speaking to a counselor or seeing a therapist makes you weak. Some of the strongest people are the people who recognize that they need help and that they want to talk to somebody. I've literally had to have security open my brother's door a couple of times. He wouldn't answer my calls. Hey, everyone, by the way. Hi, Lisa. And that can be a scary thing. It's good that he had you to do that. That can be a scary thing. And I always say to myself, because I've had people come and talk to me about people who are suicidal before. And they're like, this person told me this in confidence and told me, don't tell anybody. Don't be that person. And they tell me that person is going to hate me if I tell anybody. Would you rather that person hates you? Or would you rather that person do something to themselves and you're the only person that they told? And then when they're going around being like, I didn't know that this was going to happen. And they're trying to put the pieces together. And it's like, are you going to hold that for the rest of your life? Better safe than sorry, always. Better safe than sorry, always. I don't play with that. Checking on people is so important, but really hard when they don't want to talk to anybody. Here's the other hard truth. Here's another hard truth. We cannot prevent another person from doing this. We cannot prevent another person from doing this. What we can do is offer them support and minimize their chances of doing this. But we cannot 100% just say, okay, if I do this, this, and this, and this, and this person will not do this to themselves. There's no 100% prevention. So that's something that we have to recognize as well. That's something that we have, because some people live with a guilt their whole lives and say, if I could have done this and this and this, I could have done this better and this. It's a terrible thing. It's a terrible disease. It's a terrible thing. And sometimes you can do everything right, and that still ends up as the end result. But the key here is to do your part, to do the most of what you can possibly do. Sometimes that conversation that you're willing to have with somebody might be the thing where they were like, you know what, this is what I was thinking originally, but the fact that you took the time to listen to me, I felt that there was one person who cared about me. And because of that person, I'm willing to do the self-work to get myself out of this place. I definitely rather them hate me. That can be fixed, but bringing them back can't. That's the exact way that I think. That's the exact way that I think, Lisa. We can work on the way the person feels about me, but we can't work on them not being here. So I will always take the safe route. Like if you know somebody who has explicitly told you that they do not want to be here on this earth, call 911. Not even just calling their family or their parents or their siblings or whoever else. Call 911 if you have somebody who specifically has explicitly told you, like, I don't want to be on this earth anymore. Because that's a very serious thing, and it's irreversible. It's irreversible. We can only do so much the best we can, and you really never know what conversation will make the difference. I'm also going to say I don't think that I've ever explicitly been suicidal, but I've been in some very dark places in my life where I felt like I had nobody and I was like, I'd rather not be here than be here. I've had times like that in my life. And fortunately, during those times, I was willing to reach out to support systems, to reach out to a therapist, to talk to people that I love and trust, and they were willing to listen. And those conversations probably were the difference between me ending up there and versus ending up where I am now. And that's why now I feel a responsibility to have as many of these conversations as I can. Seeing these topics come on my plate is tough, man, because I've seen people in comas from attempts, people that I love. And it's really hard to see and it's really hard to deal with. And I have felt the guilt myself of like, what can I do differently or what can I do better? Something that I can do for the world is to be willing to have these conversations when these topics come up, to fill people in on things they need to know, to answer questions, to tell them about my personal experiences, and hope that if someone is experiencing those feelings themselves or know somebody who is or suspect somebody who is, they kind of have more of a toolkit to know what needs to be done in those scenarios. We have CPR stuff, first aid, but we act like this isn't a thing. This is like a very, very important thing that a lot of people deal with. And it's not even just a certain age anymore. Stephen was 40. I went to a funeral. I performed at a funeral 2 years ago for an 18-year-old. And that was one of the hardest things that I have ever done. And I didn't know this guy. I met him once or twice, but I didn't really know him. His mom asked me to perform. And when I was there and they were showing the picture collages and the videos or whatever, he looked so happy in all of those videos and all of those pictures. He looked like a happy kid. He was smiling. He was laughing. He was telling jokes. You just never know. You have to check in. You have to check in with your people. Make sure you know what's going on. And sometimes people don't know how to express themselves. And I'll say this again, especially men. Especially men. I've had people tell me for situations going on with me. I've had women tell me, actually, I don't know how you're so strong with this, but this feels this way for me, but I don't know how you deal with it so strong. I wish I had that kind of strength. It might not necessarily be my strength. I'm not saying that I'm not a strong person, but it's not the first thing I was taught. It's not my first tendency to lean on other people when I'm feeling down, when I'm feeling sad, when I'm feeling stressed. I grew up in a household where we didn't talk about those things. I didn't talk about those things. It was just, you be the strong, silent type. You figure it out on your own. It could be the case that this man felt a lot of these feelings, but didn't know who to talk to or how. He was like, this is not a theory or anything. This is just speculation. I'm supposed to be the provider. I'm supposed to be the strength, the pulse of the house for my wife and for my children. So I don't know how to tell them that depression is getting the best of me, because I feel like that's selfish. I feel like it's selfish when they have needs that I need to help provide for them. I have to go make the money, and I have to go I have to be the person who brings them laughs and happiness and smiles and whatever. And I don't know how to tell them that depression, for whatever reason, is just eating me up inside. And I feel like I'm such a big burden to them. I would be such a big burden to them if I dump all of this on them. So it's time for me to make my exit. And then, like, I don't want anyone to know. I don't want to have to talk to anyone about it. I'm just going to leave the note explaining, and that should cover it. That should cover me. When they see that, they're going to know it's not their fault. It's nothing that they could have done differently, better, whatever. Not knowing that the people that are still here that have been left behind would rather hear all of that. They would rather talk to you about it. They would rather even attend therapy sessions with you. They would rather have those conversations and put in that work and do whatever it takes to help you get to a better place versus no longer having you here, because that's the worst feeling in the world. Thank you for your vulnerability, Mark. Talking about it is so beneficial. I know a lot of us really appreciate you. Thank you, Lisa. It's the worst feeling in the world. I had an uncle about 7 years ago. We lost him. And for me, I thought to myself, man, he was going through struggles for years, and I found a note. He had a safe in his room, and I found a note. It was not like a goodbye note, but it was just a note that I read that only a few of us ended up seeing. And it made me realize how much he was struggling and how long. But it was taboo. The family did not want to talk about his struggles. They were just kind of like, leave him over there. We'll be over here, leave him over there. Hopefully he comes over here at some point. But I'm saying to myself, I'm like, knowing the type of person who I am, I wish I had gotten a chance to really talk to him about what he was going through. I would rather talk to him for days, weeks, hours, months, years, than to have gotten the call that I got saying that they found him in his room. Like, I'll take a million conversations over that. Losing a job can be just as bad as losing a close loved one. It's true. There's some stats on that too, Trisha, that I've actually seen at some point. Because sometimes you can have your whole identity and livelihood tied to that job. Your job is your bread and butter. It's your sense of purpose. It's the thing that helps you pay the bills. And then just this sudden loss can make you feel rejection, confusion. It can make you feel some pain. This is one thing I want to say too. It's not a good thing when people minimize something that means something to another person. It's all relative. For instance, somebody could be going through a breakup and then they come and talk to you. Hey, I broke up with the boyfriend, girlfriend, whoever. And then you're like, people break up every day. You know, like, it's no big deal. Just move on. Like, you still have a roof over your head. You still have clothes, food on the table, whatever. So you shouldn't be worried about that. But they are worried about that because this is their personal life. People have different capacities of how they handle things. People have different levels and depths to how they love somebody. And this thing could be something that puts them over the edge that you dismissed because you said it's no big deal. Somebody could come to you with a job loss and you're like, well, just put in for unemployment and get another job. Jobs come and go. No big deal. There's people that don't have jobs, or there's people that make $1 a day working in the Philippines. Okay, I understand. But to that person in that moment, that job is making them feel on the edge, and it can just take a moment. There's people who feel things situationally. There's people who have an underlying depression that's just always there. I'm one of them. No matter what, even if I won a $10 million tonight, I would be happy about winning the $10 million, but I'm still going to have the depression for the rest of my life, no matter what. It's underlying. But there's other people who don't necessarily even have an underlying depression, and something happens, a situation, they call it situational depression. Something specific happens. They lose someone, they lose a job, they end a relationship, they have a car accident, they lose their car, they injure themselves, they get some kind of physical diagnosis. It could be anything. And all of a sudden, a life that did not have the presence of depression before, or not an obvious one, because I feel we all experience some kind of depression, but it didn't have any kind of severe depression at any point in time, suddenly has a new trajectory. And then when they start reaching out to their people to tell them, hey, this is what I'm experiencing and this is what I'm feeling, you know what? I think we all need to be a little bit more willing to listen to people, to show empathy, at the very least, show some sympathy, give them some time to express themselves, tell them you're sorry, and then maybe get into some solutions. And if you don't have the capacity for solutions, at least suggest to them, maybe you need to talk to somebody, or maybe speaking to somebody about this would be beneficial to you, and do so from a place of love rather than trying to pass them off. Because I think people can feel the difference between whether you're like, I love you and I want to see you get better and get help, versus I don't want to talk to you about this anymore because you're bothering me. Go stand over here. So these are the main things that I wanted to get out of this situation with Steven. Steven, as we know, was a happy guy in terms of what we saw. He was somebody who danced, and everyone says he lit up a room. Everyone said he brought love and light to every room that he's in. Celebrities have been talking about him. Ellen, who was it? Justin Timberlake. A lot of celebrities that said they have met and encountered this guy. And also not just celebrities, his personal friends and family and his fans. They're all kind of saying the same thing. I never got this impression from him. Take that as a lesson. Think about all the people in your life, the happy ones, the strong ones, the ones that appear that nothing ever goes wrong in their life, the ones that don't look like anything could bother them because they're just the happiest person in the world. I'm not saying they're all going through some kind of underlying severe depression. I'm not saying that. But I am saying we all, to an extent, deal with the world's elements. There's so many elements going on in the world. Life in this world is hard, period. It doesn't matter your status. It doesn't matter your occupation. It doesn't matter how much money you have in the bank. We all go through life, and there's some elements that we all face, and it's hard for everybody. We need to be cognizant of that. We need to recognize this, and we need to pay closer attention to the people around us. Because I had a talk that I gave to high school kids a few years ago. I said, how well do you really know your people? We are in an era. Everything is TikTok. Everything is YouTube. Everything is social media, Facebook, Instagram. We can be in a situation where we all go out to a restaurant, and the most important thing, getting the right angles and snapping the right pictures to be able to post, to show people. And I do this too. But it's like, how much do we get into these conversations with each other? Sometimes people ask you how your family is doing as a formality. Hey, how are you doing? How's the family doing? And if you're like, oh, my family's doing okay, thanks for asking, that's the end of the conversation. There's so much more that can be spoken about than just to say, how's the family doing? And you say they're doing okay. And then that's the end of the conversation. There's so much that goes on between the lines. Check on your network. Ask them open-ended questions, not questions that can just be answered by a yes or no. And if right now you're not in the position or you don't have the time to do that, section off a specific time. You know what? I want to talk to my mom. I want to talk to my son. I want to talk to my sister. I want to talk to my friend. I want to talk to whoever it is that is, in your life or part of your life. And I want to just really get to know them. And oftentimes you could be surprised by somebody you've known 1 year, 2 years, 5, 10, 20, your whole life. It could be somebody you've known your whole life. And when you take the time to really deep dive into a conversation to get to know that person, you might find things that you never knew. I found that was happening for me in 2020 when here in New York, when everything shut down and everything was locked down and there was nothing to do. There was no entertainment to distract us. There was people that I was around all the time, but we were always doing activities. So we weren't really talking. We were just congregated doing activities. Now, what we had was like the phone. And I'm hearing things and finding things and sharing things that I never shared before in my life. So that's I could probably talk for another 5 hours, 10 hours about this, but I'm just going to wrap it up by saying that. Don't assume that because you see somebody looks happy, they're smiling, they're always bubbly and upbeat looking. Don't just assume that they're okay because of that. Check in on them, especially check in on those ones, because sometimes they're the ones that are going through the most. Ask them how they're doing. Ask them if there's anything that you can help take off their plate. Really do as much as you can to get below the surface, because you would rather spend that extra time and groundwork having that conversation than to never be able to talk to them again. I can say that from experience. There's many conversations that I wish that I could have had that I can never have again. And that's why the people that I do have, I try my best to listen to them, to make sure that I know as much as they're willing to share with me about what's going on with their lives, and to have more in-depth relationships with them. And that's my urge for you guys to do the same. Thank you for talking on this hard topic. You're welcome. Always great to chat with you. And one other thing that I wanted to put up. This is the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. It used to be 1-800-273-TALK. It is now 988. You dial 988 and you get to the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. And you don't have to specifically be in suicide and crisis to call this lifeline. You can call this lifeline if you know somebody who you are worried about, you're concerned about them. They've given you information that they want to end their life, or they've told you something that sounds concerning. You can give this lifeline a call to get tips and advice on how you deal with it, because not everybody is a mental health professional, and that's okay. Don't try to take on that burden alone. Don't try to take on that burden by yourself. There are resources out there, and there's people out there that can readily assist you right now. because sometimes you won't have the opportunity to call a therapist's office and get an appointment and talk to a therapist or whatever. Sometimes there's situations that require immediate attention. I'm going to repeat this last one more time. If you know somebody who is in an immediate crisis and it's an emergency, number one, call 911. But number two, if you have the opportunity to, call that number, 988, and talk to somebody immediately to get tips, advice, and maybe even support for yourself. And if you need that number for yourself, call that number yourself to get the assistance and the help that you need. Oh, I'm glad that I said that last part, because I was going to end without saying that. If you are somebody who is watching this and you feel like a severe depression and you feel a severe amount of hopelessness and helplessness, reach out to a therapist, please. You can call that same number, 988. I promise you that the people in your life would rather assist you to get through your challenges than to never be able to talk to you ever again. You're not a burden to them. They want to help you. And there's so many resources available. Please seek those out. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and we will talk again soon.